Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, but you were live.
Okay. I think I'm back. We will see. Let's rock and roll. Did we ever roll credits?
No, roll the
Okay.
beginning.
All right, here we go.
Well, Bill, nothing like a little cyber attack to get the day going.
Well, you on occasion have said things are going to get what do you call it? Sporty.
Sporty, yes.
So literally,
yes.
in explanation, just literally seconds before going live, we had a pretty good attack. It appears, and
Yes.
took my system down. So somebody out there, I guess, doesn't want the message today.
I guess that's it. So, sports fans, thanks for joining us today. This is the Georgia Show, brought to you by the Georgia Record, georgiarecord.com. Please support us. Support our no ad subscriptions. It's very, very important right now that we get this continuing revenue because we're fighting on a lot of fronts, and I can bring that in. If you go to the Georgia Record on the right-hand side, subscribe with no ads, and you get access to all of our content. It's $10 a month with no advertisements on your phone, no pop-ups. You get access to all 13 sites and growing. So thank you for that support. We really appreciate it. That's been strong lately, and it's extremely helpful. And we'd like to keep that going so that we have revenue every month that we can count on at least to pay some of the bills. So, wow, we're all kind of discombobulated here. But Bill, what do you want to talk about? What do we got on the show today?
Okay, so we're going to cover something that I'm calling patterns. We're beginning to see things that over time seem to indicate something that you might not see in a simple moment of time. It has to do with behavior, has to do with people's statements, has to do with people's actions. And so we're gonna cover that in a story that we published just in these last 2 days. We will move on to some things that others are reporting that have to do with some very odd expenses that have shown up in the GOP, and some things that we worked on ourselves to explore a little bit deeper. We'll look at some of the other things that we see going on with Trump and some of his actions, and the way that people are interpreting those or have interpreted the same kinds of actions in the past. And we may, if we have time, we'll get into a segment that Tucker did with a lady named Catherine Witt, and some of the, I'll call it astounding.
Catherine Austin Fitts is her name.
Fitts, pardon me.
Yeah.
That is astounding in some ways, and we'll show a couple of clips from that, and then recommend to people watch it. So in its entirety. So still trying to get centered here, but that's what we'll cover today.
So I'm looking forward to that. Catherine Austin Fitts is a friend of the show. We've interviewed her before. Fascinating insight to a lot of things. We've got a new sponsor, which I mentioned, and we're selling a lot of product for Alp. I just want to run a new ad from Tucker. Please support us, support our sponsors. It helps us keep on the air and pay the bills. So here we go.
Carlson, you may have noticed that the companies whose products you buy tend to kind of hate you. They're controlled by massive multinational corporations, and they have all kinds of weird agendas that you're supporting when you buy their products. We didn't realize that nicotine pouches, which we've used for years, were in this category. We just want a nicotine pouch. And then they lecture you and take the money you give them to support things that you hate. So we decided we're going to make our own, and we did. And it is, we can say, not bragging here, just stating fact, the single best nicotine pouch in the world. It's called Alp, and it comes in all kinds of excellent flavors. wintergreen, tropical fruit, chilled mint, refreshing chill, sweet nectar, and a bunch of others that we're rolling out. By the way, there are 20 per tin, not 15 like some of our competitors who will not be named. Zyn. And they're in 3, 6, and 9 milligrams. It is the single best nicotine pouch ever made. Go to alppouch.com. You will not regret it.
So that's outpouch.com/CDM. And Bill's got his there. He had to put one in.
Just to irritate the bad guys.
So I got a friend of mine tried them out, and he sent me this once he got the 10 in the mail. He said, "Hey boss, got them last night. Fantastic. Effing love them. Mint flavor is perfect. Just strong enough to offset Zyn mouth, but weak enough I can drink coffee without feeling like it's a menthol cigarette. Thanks again." So people really love the product, and we're happy to support Tucker and support outpouch.com/CDM. Okay, Bill, let's get into it.
Okay. All right. So again, we're going to call today's segments patterns. And so during this last 48 hours, we reported on a story that we had promised on in past weeks, and we finally got some additional information and were able to complete it. Has to do with an organization called Climate One and a program they aired, and it's been some time. This was back in 2018, but it was between Debbie Dooley and Christine Pelosi. And yes, in fact, Christine Pelosi is Nancy Pelosi's daughter. And this had to do with climate change and some work that Debbie Dooley was reported doing regarding and surrounding alternative energy, specifically solar energy. And we reported on this through the Georgia Record. And unfortunately, as part of this, we're going to show that the organization that aired this and put it together does seem to be anti-Trump in many ways, or at least questioning of Trump, heavily questioning. And we rely on things like, well, before we even get to that, we wanted to show something that just about a month before the show was taped, the show in San Francisco held by Climate One. This was a quote from Debbie Dooley that was reported by the AJC, and they reported it was in a tweet that she had posted, and it reads, "Amnesty Dawn has lost my support." And they characterized Dooley as a Trump voter and one of the founders of the Tea Party movement. He lied to voters in order to get elected. He has been co-opted by the folks we elected him to fight. That does not sound to me like a Trump supporter, and it doesn't sound really to anybody like a Trump supporter. If you'll go to the Georgia Record, you'll be able to look this up. I've got a link back to the AJC article that reported it. We looked for that tweet and could not find it, so it appears that it's been removed. Here is the current page, one of the rotating front page, but one of those pages from Climate One today currently reads, "Trump breaks wind." Again, sounds like something that is anti-Trump, certainly questioning, but sounds anti-Trump to me. The event that they both did jointly was called Bridging Trump's Divide, which seems to position Trump's policies as divisive to the country. And here's a more current post regarding Christine Pelosi, and she's singing the praises of being able to cure, meaning get ballots accepted that for one reason or another were not accepted initially. So again, back to election integrity, there seems to be continuing questions here. As part of this session, it was recorded and then aired as a podcast. And within that, both players, both Christine Pelosi and Debbie Dooley, said they vehemently opposed Trump's solar tariffs. Let me play that.
Are deals that can be made when they put together the budget, not the president's current budget, certainly not the solar tariffs that he just recently announced that the two of us oppose vehemently. Yes. When we look,
you can hear Dooley chime in after she says vehemently and says, right. And so let's go back here for a moment. Dooley additionally disagreed and said specifically she disagreed with exiting the Paris climate accords. Let's listen to that.
If you move towards the goals of the Paris Accords, I mean, again, you can't call it the Paris Accords, you can't call it climate action among certain circles, because the Republicans won't vote for it because they'll feel that they can't, because they'll be primaried by somebody who doesn't have the benefit of Debbie's coalition to help them.
So,
because of Republican support in Congress and elsewhere. Yeah.
They did. So, and that was good, but I disagreed pulling out of the Paris Accord. Donald Trump can say whatever he wants to and push coal. The bottom line is that boat has sailed. It will never be the king that it once was. And that.
So let's not pull punches here. It is very clear from listening to these that they were in opposition to some of the stuff that Trump was putting in place all the way back in 2018. They talked about being vehemently opposed to the tariffs that we now understand are a central fulcrum to putting the U.S. back on an even keel with other countries. And in fact, when you understand who makes the solar panels that in part they were talking about, it's China.
That's a good point, Bill, because you were talking about, again, these policies were against what Trump is standing for. They're bigger than that. It's against Western civilization, against freedom, against American industry, and supporting China, as you said.
That's correct. I mean, you can already see the trappings of this. So to say you vehemently oppose the tariffs is it a misunderstanding? Is it lack of knowledge? Is it purely just fighting Trump policies? We don't know. But then saying, oh, disagree with leaving the Paris Accords. Let's remember that when Trump was reelected, the day of the inauguration itself, January 20th, he re-signed an exit from the Paris Accords. And during that announcement, they specifically said what the value of that was to the U.S. I want to play this.
The withdrawal from the Paris Climate Treaty. Yes, sir. We're going to save over $1 trillion by withdrawing from that treaty.
I want to make sure people heard that. $1 trillion. $1,000 billion. So is that a good thing for the U.S.? You betcha. And notably, you could hear that reaction in the crowd at the time that he signed this on January 20th, just hours, maybe not even fully hours after being inaugurated. So again, why would you argue against some of this? Let's go back here for a moment. We'll come back to something she said in just a minute, but you begin to get a sense of the fact that, it was part of Trump's plan, even back in 2018, when this joint presentation was put together between Dooley and Pelosi. The United States is insisting that all countries that have placed artificial trade barriers and tariffs on goods going into their country remove those barriers or tariffs or be met with more than reciprocity by the USA. So again, these tariffs are there to protect the USA. And if you argue against them, do you realize you are essentially protecting, in this case, China and other Far East countries that were involved in making these? The other piece to consider is the positive aspect of this. And I found this to be quite enlightening. This is a post that has a chart that shows the percentage of U.S. government federal funding, federal revenue that was being derived from tariffs going back into essentially the beginning of the century. And you can see this is 100% at the top on the upper left here. And so over the course of time, as we have apparently gradually done away with even the concept of tariffs, more and more of that cost has had to be borne by U.S. citizens and other entities that within the U.S. to pay for federal revenue. So why, again, would you go against something that might move us back toward other countries contributing appropriately to federal revenue and having that burden lifted from the American public. Seems surprising that you would argue against something like that. Yes?
It does. And you know what gets me in all this, Bill, is this is what, 6 years ago, 7 years ago. I mean, a lot of people
essentially.
a lot of people changed their policies, but there hasn't been, Debbie hasn't come out and said, look, I was different back then. I changed my views. It's been a attack mode. I mean, they called us, Islamic, sympathizers or whatever she called us. So she's blocking people. There's no acknowledgement of this, that it's real and that, yeah, I changed, I made a mistake, or I changed my outlook. There's none of that.
That's correct. Isn't that interesting? We noted that also from Kelly Loeffler. Kelly Loeffler went against Trump, went against the challenges back on January 2021. And yet, to my knowledge, has never apologized to Trump for going against the interests that we now understand to be the interests of the U.S., the interests of the proper election, the interests of those challenges that were brought forth. And it was very interesting in this interchange between Dooley and Pelosi that they asked her at one point, why does it seem that there's a dichotomy, a divergence of what, and they mentioned Congress and others, and they also mentioned the administration, meaning Trump's administration, between that and what the people of the U.S. want. And she had a very interesting answer that may give a hint toward some of the motivation between all of this.
Money. I mean, that's what it all. I mean, that's that simple. Follow the money.
Follow the money. And maybe when we look at some of the stuff going on in Georgia today, maybe if we understand some of the things that have not been done, when to most Americans it would be clear that they would be the right thing to do, maybe that remains ultimately the motivation behind some of these divergences. We don't know, but it is an interesting position, and we find it interesting that she herself would bring it up.
And Bill, I wrote an open letter after the Islamic slur against us and to Debbie on the Georgia Record and said, come on the show. We haven't heard a peep. I mean, there's been no response. She's welcome to come on and explain her position anytime.
Yeah. Well, and to this report itself is based on facts. It's based on the documentation by the AJC, by Climate One, and others. And indeed, within this event itself, she confirms a relationship with one of the NGOs that we reported on weeks ago, Southern Alliance for Clean Energy, and the fact that she was working with them. So we will stand right behind the facts that we've uncovered and believe them to be very, very accurate. And it's a shame that this can't be dealt with in a more forthcoming way by those that are being reported. So that's that for that story for the moment. There may be more coming.
Okay. We have a lot of new sponsors. One of them is Nucleo Boost. I'm going to run this ad and then talk about it real quick.
I'm watching my friends gain more and more weight. And then eventually I got to tell you, this is a little dark, but bad diet literally killed my whole crew.
Wow.
Diabetes, a stroke. I mean, all kinds of stuff. It's like, you had a stroke? You're not even 50 years old. You guys got to quit eating this stuff. Your body knows what's what. You're not conscious of this. But that's why people will go to the refrigerator and they'll grab this and that and the other and put together this outrageously elaborate combination of foods. Your body's trying to reach balance. Unbeknownst to us, our bodies are always trying to reach homeostasis. You can't eat all of this stuff and expect to live a long time. And one thing led to another, and I went, forget this. We're going to make our own product. So we partnered with one of the world's top 3 biochemists where nutrition-specific study is concerned. I said, all I want is the best nutritional and immune support product in the world. So we mixed it in yogurt. It's a powder. I got a bag of it here. I keep one on the console all the time, just so I can show people.
Yeah.
And it's a powder. Now, this is not candy. This is hardcore nutrition. And sugar is an enemy. And most people do not know that the reason these bellies are showing up on people all over the place, your body makes fat to store the toxins it can't get rid of. So it just puts them over here. But I can tell you this, you take this for 30 days and then lay off of it for 2 or 3 days, and you'll go, good grief, give me some more. Skin, nails, hair growing back. Cut yourself and it heals in half the time.
So this is the Nucleo Boost. I use it every day, and a lot of people on our team use it. It basically is everything you need at the cellular level for good nutrition. It's just a one-stop shop, 1 scoop a day. I put it in a smoothie or in the yogurt. It's got the BioAllo to get it into your cells. You can go to cdmnutrition.com and check it out. Check out the subscription. It's cheaper. That's cdmnutrition.com. And just get healthy. This is one way to do that. For us, it's good because it helps with stamina. For our heavy schedule, just keeps everybody motoring along. So check it out. Back to you, Bill.
All right, so let's move along to our next topic. So during this week, there's been some very interesting things reported that have been found in federal filings. And let's begin with this. So this is a post by Kylie Jane Kremer, Amy Kremer's daughter, and Kylie Jane has her own following and posts often on Twitter with things that she and others are finding. This happens to be centered around a FEC, Federal Election Commission filing done by the Georgia GOP. And earlier in the week, they found something very interesting. It is an expense, essentially a way of reporting expenses. And it lists as the payee Alloy Personal. And it wasn't known what this was at first, but it was a non-trivial number and people began questioning it. $479 for something, and it was called a meeting. And so I guess folks started looking for, who the heck is Alloy Personal? Well, they ended up finding it, and it caused even more questions. There it is. Alloy Personal is Alloy Personal Training. Now, how could that be? How would we have the Georgia GOP, led by Josh McCoon, paying for apparently personal training appointments? And this was reported by our friends over at Voice of Rural America, and BKP brought this up. Others started delving into it. Kylie Jane Kremer herself reported that she had done her own independent review of the documents and found it to be valid. And so after they found the first one, they found more. And apparently they found 4 of these that had been executed, all for $479. So it appears from first glance that these are for 4 separate individuals. We don't know who. I know that folks have asked members of the executive committee who might be in a position to know. I think they've gone to the treasurer of the GOP who might be in a position to know. But these do not indicate a person's name on them, just the same thing. Alloy Personal, and let me see if we can zoom in a bit more so you can see it. Alloy Personal, there you can see the way it's listed on the top box there. And it's listed as a meeting. And then they have amounts. Now, it's a little difficult to see on this screen, but they break the amounts into what are called federal share, non-federal share, and then the total. So the total on each one of these is $479, and it's broken down into 2 components, one just over $100 and the other $379. Within, I guess, 48 hours, they found another one that delved back to December. Same place, I believe the same amount. So what does this mean? Well, clearly, the GOP, Georgia GOP, accepts money both from national political agencies like the Republican National Committee and others, but also gathers funds from folks that are here in Georgia and I guess around the country that want to contribute to the Georgia GOP, but do so as individuals. You would think that they would shy away from spending donations on such things and may in fact not supposed to be spending donations on these things. And then in the coming days, there appears to be more that's now found. One is this lists Brooks Brothers, like the folks that make suits and custom shirts and custom ties and other things. This one's for $131 and again is broken into these components, federal share and non-federal share. Here's another one. This is for a place called Sky Jump, which appears to be some sort of an entertainment thing, or something to entertain oneself at the Jump Zone. And again, lists a partial name, slightly different on the FEC filing, lists it again as a meeting, and again breaks it down into federal share and non-federal share. So how do these relate to activities that folks are contributing to, and they believe that they're helping fund for the Georgia GOP? You would think that those activities would be supporting candidates and helping candidates with their needs in their campaigns, and kind of begs the question. And the reason is because just this past week, I believe in Cobb County, they had a set of elections for their county commissioners. And in fact, both Republican candidates just got trounced. The Democratic candidates won. And people have been asked, what did the Georgia GOP do to support these Republican candidates? And we're not hearing clear answers, if there are answers. And so it begs the question, if we're supposed to be supporting Republican conservative candidates and supporting those with money being raised, why is this money, in some cases, it appears, being spent on other things? It seems a reasonable question to ask, in my mind.
Just to jump in there, we did I think 9 stories on the Fulton County trust issue, and one of the issues was there was no records of all the money that disappeared out of that trust. And we were told at the time, you're destroying unity. The one prominent GOP person in Georgia said we were working for Kamala. Well, essentially this is, you're not helping. That money should have gone to candidates, right? And it wasn't going to candidates. It was going elsewhere. And we don't know where. We know some of it, but this is a pattern. If you don't do the right thing, then it continues, right?
Yes.
So if there's no accountability, no transparency, no media accountability on our side, then we don't win eventually, is my point.
Well, that's right. And it goes back to some of the other oddities we've noted here in Georgia. One of our state senators gets thrown to the floor, and there's a call for support for that senator, and there's silence that exudes from the other members of the Senate and House. Very few stood up and said anything. I think 1 or 2 perhaps that are part of the Georgia Freedom Caucus. How could that possibly be? How could it be that, these funds are being spent in ways that don't seem to be appropriate? And, the party leadership appears to be trying to very quickly explain it away, which is getting more difficult by the day as there's more found.
Well, that ties into, I'm looking forward to the video you're going to play with Catherine Austin Fitts, because she talks about the breakaway civilization and how they have no allegiance to our laws.
Isn't that funny that would come up this week as well? We'll get to that in just a couple of minutes, but thank you for mentioning that. So one of the things we occasionally get hints about how to look at some of the data that's emerging in these cases. And we kind of got a hint on this one as well. So you'll recall that these particular expenditures were to Alloy Personal, Brooks Brothers, and then the Sky Jump, whatever that is. So just take a look at this that we find pretty interesting. You'll remember that I mentioned as we went through each of these that they're broken into a federal share and a non-federal share. So for that Ally Personal Training expenditure, total was $479. $100.59 was allocated as a federal share. $378.41 was allocated as a non-federal share. If we just do some easy math and just figure out what is the percentage for each one of those, we come up with 21% for federal, 79% for non-federal. Okay, interesting. Let's look at another one. Brooks Brothers. Now, this was $131. Not the end of the world, but interesting, and interesting that it was charged to the GOP. And again, we see this break between federal share and non-federal share. What's the percentage there? The same exact percentages as we saw in Ally Personal Training. Why would that be? You would think that federal share means the part apportioned to federal for one purpose or another. But why would they be identical between two such divergent expenditures? Brooks Brothers, and both of these notably are called a meeting. I would be astounded if we were holding meetings at a Brooks Brothers store. How about the third one, the Sky Jump? Also broken between federal and non-federal, and also 21% to 79%. We're not sure what that means, but when you see patterns, and we started the show with this, when you see patterns, they seem to be a hint towards something else. So we're not sure where this is going to go from here on out. We know that I think dozens of folks are pawing through the filings and other documents and looking to see exactly what money has been spent and in what areas. And we think that this deserves answers for the people of Georgia and the other people that have contributed, to the Georgia GOP. They deserve to know how their money is being spent, in my belief. And this is one of the reasons why.
And when you combine that with the treasurer of the Georgia GOP has no access to the bank records, then, it's even more interesting.
That's right. That's right. Did you want to take another break before we move on?
Yeah, please. One of our biggest sponsors is the Wellness Company, and they've been really good to us. And I would encourage you to take a look at it and go to their site and check out. This is their contagion kit. It really has everything you need with the nebulizer and the steroids in case you get some kind of bird flu thing. This is the travel kit that I use all the time. I literally use it when I travel multiple times now. You have the Ultimate Spike Detox if you have somebody who's been vaccinated that you're worried about their blood. But go to the Wellness Company. I'm going to play a quick ad from them.
Well, in the case of hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin, these are two medications that have been FDA approved for use in humans for decades. They are very, very inexpensive. Interestingly, available over the counter in almost every other country other than the US and Canada. You can just walk into a pharmacy and buy them like we buy Tylenol in much of the world because they're that safe. And we've known for decades that ivermectin has very strong antiviral properties. It has anti-inflammatory properties, and both ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine are what we call zinc ionophores. They help to move zinc from the bloodstream into the cell, which is where it needs to be in order to fight off a virus. So lots of application for these, and we have every reason to believe that those drugs also will likely have some efficacy against H5N1 or a number of other respiratory viruses that we may meet down the road.
Bill, one more. We have a resident financial advisor at CDM and the Georgia Record, David Cross. If you have a transition in your life, whether it be a profit, divorce, sale of a business, whatever, you have financial issues that need to be dealt with, David is the guy to call. We trust him immensely. He's been through multiple bear markets, knows how to deal with your assets. Trouble like now, uncertainty, please run one of his ads.
This is a special report. Knowing how to invest your money is harder than ever before. Dealing with stock market volatility, record debt, and terrorist attacks requires new thinking. At U.S. Asset Management, we can help you see the world more clearly so that you can move beyond the chaos and invest with confidence. Call us, visit us online, or drop by our office. U.S. Asset Management, helping you make better decisions with your money.
So if you got questions, give David a call. Just call and talk. Not a salesman, just a good guy to bounce ideas off. Back to you, my friend.
That's great. By the way, I can attest to that because in a presentation I saw the other day that he had made, one of the folks in the audience asked, how is it possible to get a review? And the answer was, sure, just call me. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, exactly.
So I hadn't planned on showing this particular screen, but I'm going to do it anyway, so that we can give people a sense of the coverage that Tucker had with Catherine. They covered a lot of ground here. And the underpinning, I guess I'll call it, is that so much of the world's structure of economy, currency, money flow, and so forth appears to be structured in a way to provide control, not just influence, but literal control. And Catherine reported that she had done just a lot of work for many years now on this. She's a past government official. She's done this work along with some of the best in the industry. And if you haven't seen this, I would definitely recommend you look up on Tucker Carlson's X account or on his Rumble page and so forth. This interview, it is quite long, but it goes through a number of different fascinating topics. I want to play the introduction, but then we'll skip to a couple of I'll call it the more astounding subjects that came up, and why we think that these may be important for people to listen to. So let's start with the introduction, then I may skip forward.
System is the leader globally in laundering dirty money. I said to this wonderful group, let's pretend there's a big red button up here on the lectern, and if you push that button, you can stop all hard narcotics trafficking tomorrow. Who here will push the button? And out of 100 people dedicated to evolving our society spiritually, guess how many would push the button?
I don't know.
1.
You suggested the control grid is in part designed to manage the population.
So if you want to move people to a much lower economic footprint, having complete control is obviously very convenient.
Okay, so the bottom line is the majority is about to get a lot poorer.
So the question is, where's all this money going? And one of the things I've looked at is the underground base and city infrastructure and transportation system that's been built.
What would be the purpose?
I think if you're worried about a near extinction event.
So these are pretty interesting topics and might be to some people, concerning. And I get that. At the same time, they bear at least listening to get a perspective of what she's uncovered in her studies. So I'm going to jump forward here to what you just covered or mentioned, that to many people is going to be one of the more interesting or astounding areas that she spoke of.
And before
Right.
you do that, what
ahead.
Tucker said, and we should repeat, this is not some crazy off the internet. She was a partner at Dillon Reed. She worked for the Bush administration at the Housing and Urban Development. Very high-speed woman. She's on the board of Sallie Mae, which is the student loan organization. So she's a financial pro and not some whack job off the internet. But go ahead.
Right. Thank you.
So let me give you a couple of reasons why. First of all, the miners are looking for a variety of different resources. So there are practical reasons, if you can get the cost down, that you would want to do asteroid mining. The big economic one is control is most easily implemented by satellites. So you want to put up a whole ring of satellites that combined with telecommunications can basically help run the control grid. And not just the control grid in the West, the control grid. If you're going to shift huge amounts of money globally, how are you going to track and enforce that your money is being properly invested? Well, you need a control grid globally. So I think that's part of it. The last thing, and I don't know the answer to this, is I think there is real concern about geophysical risks.
Yeah.
And one way to deal with that is to make sure we don't bet the ranch on one planet.
So to that, if we could just linger on that, thank you for that. That'll make sense. If we just linger on one question. So geophysical risks. So we've been lectured for, 30 years now about climate change. Climate change is obviously an ongoing feature of life on this planet. The glaciers.
It's just an op.
So, well, of course, it's an op. And I think people have figured that out.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that smart, highly informed people aren't worried about
Right.
geophysical risks. They are, and I know some of them.
Right.
So what do you think those risks are that honest, smart people who are interested in self-preservation and thriving, like what are the risks they're worried about?
So I think the first is a solar minimum, where you get big drops in the economy and the agriculture and you can't feed the population.
Right.
So
Because there are changes in climate because of the distance of the Earth from the sun.
Right.
And that changes.
right. So we know throughout history we go through periods of solar minimum.
Solar minimum is the name?
I think it's called solar minimum. I'm not an expert in any of this. So
they are worried about climate change.
I'm going to jump forward just a little bit here because I want to get to the part that I was originally referring to. Let's see if it's here.
The, theories of what causes these events. But there is a history of near extinction events. And one of the things that I've looked at, because I'm trying to figure out, between fiscal 1998 and fiscal 2015, there were 21 trillion of undocumentable adjustments in the U.S. government. If you go to our website, missingmoney.solera.com, we have years and years of documentation, including the government financials that show this. And so the question is, where's all this money going? And one of the things I've looked at in the process of looking at where all this money is going is the underground base and city infrastructure and transportation system that's been built. And
I'm sorry?
Yes. So we have built an extraordinary number of underground bases and supposedly transportation systems. Some of these are some of these are documented as part of the national security infrastructure. I think there are many more. So
in the United States?
In the United States, on all over the world. But from 2021 to 2023, I took one of the smartest subscribers in the Solera Report network, and he and I spent 2 years collecting all the data and all the allegations on underground bases. And then we systematically went through and tried to estimate our guess. This is totally a guess of how many underground bases, both underground in the United States, but also underground under the ocean around the United States. And our estimate was 170.
Okay, so I guess we'll call that a teaser for folks to actually go watch the entire interview. But these things have been theorized, talked about in some circles for quite some time. And yet here we have, as you say, a person with good, credible, authentic background, someone that is known in wide circles and with solid history of her experiences sitting on boards and so forth. And yet she's reporting this and talking about spending 2 years to develop the data. I have a funny feeling there's more to be learned here, just like there's been more to be learned about JFK, RFK, MLK, the activities of the FBI, and so much more. And this just seems to be, I guess I'll call it the latest.
Well, the fascinating part I took from that interview was, Tucker asked, well, who's doing all this? And she essentially says it's central bankers globally with that have sovereign immunity, as in they don't have any allegiance to our laws and can break our laws at will, and they're inserted into our government. And if you look at that makes a lot of sense, because you see people breaking laws and not doing the right thing over and over. And she's like, they have no allegiance to the Constitution and they don't feel they have to follow it. And it's like, while you're building a new structure, you're keeping the old one alive until you get the new one big enough, and then you take down the old one. And I think she's right about that. And she says it's intergenerational wealth that's behind this. And the fascinating thing, what she says, the only answer to it is Christianity, which I found highly instructive.
It was very interesting. And isn't it interesting throughout the past years, when we see religions attacked, it often is Christianity that's being attacked, not doing the attacking, but is being attacked. And you could see that.
Hillary Clinton couldn't even say the word. She called us Easter worshipers.
That's right. Isn't that funny? There, you could see it during the Olympics last year with symbolism that appeared it mocked Christianity. Let's face it. Let's call it what it is. Articles in magazines where they're making fun of the Last Supper with Madonna and so forth. And, award shows where people dress as devils and demons and blood and all this stuff. You can't ignore it any longer. It is right there. And the question would be why? Why do we find this, attractive? Most people do not, but somebody does apparently.
Yeah. We're going to stay on. It's one of our themes at CDM, is the backbone of Western civilization, which is Christianity, and really the only hope for the future.
That's right. That's right. So that's what we have for today. We would again refer folks back to Alex Jones' advice from a couple of weeks ago. He said you're going to see people that are going to move left and right, good and bad, and it's just what's going to happen. There's not going to be a middle at some point as we move forward, and so this is apparently continuing to show itself. We'll see how this all plays out, and we'll cover it as we find it.
So I'm going to show a couple things here real quick before we go. So we interviewed Catherine Austin Fitts almost a little over a year ago. You can go to CDM. If you just type in Fitts in the search bar, you can find that in our Masters of the Universe series of financial wizards. And also, I wanted to talk about books. The Manhattan.press is our site in New York. And excuse me, I have to click a button here. And if you go to the Manhattan.press, what the heck is that? Huh. That's not what I wanted. 1 second. If you go to the Manhattan.press and you go to the top menu for the Manhattan bestsellers list. Sorry, guys, I got to bring this back up, and I'm doing it on the fly. But there you go. So if you go to the Manhattan.press and then top right, there is the Manhattan bestsellers list. If you click on that, you can get all of the books that are best-selling in the U.S. There's editors' picks, children's fiction, nonfiction, history, politics. All of it is there, and you can buy the books below. And if you buy them through us, then you support free media. But essentially, this is a list that is accurate. There's no bias. There's liberal books on here. It's simply the best-selling books in the country. And on top of that, if you have a book you want to buy, go to cdm.press, top corner or top menu, and you'll see the CDM bookstore. Buy it from us, even if it's for your work, for a vacation, for education, whatever. Just buy it from us instead of Amazon, and that is a way to support free media as well. That's all I got, Bill. Thank you.
Okay, that's great. We will see everyone again on Wednesday evening at 7 p.m. And you'll be on tomorrow at what time, Todd?
Yes, the skiff starts tomorrow, 10 o'clock, 10 a.m. Eastern till noon, Monday through Friday. We'll have a bang-up show tomorrow. I think we'll have Gawain Towler on from the Reform Party in the UK. If not, we're still iffy on that, but we'll have a great guest lineup as usual. People say they love the show, mainly to the guests. So check out the skiff Monday through Friday, 10 to noon Eastern. Thanks.
That's great. All right. We will see everybody next time.